Yo, what is up, dudes? Well, just a few weeks ago, I was on here with an old Jackson. I think it's from 2001. And, kind of a nice guitar I had found for short money. And was pretty happy with that. I figure that's probably my only major purchase of the year. Until... this came along. All right, we are back. Here we are back with this amazing 1986 Kramer Pacer Deluxe. Check this puppy out. It is just one killer guitar. Let me go over in this cam here. It's 38 years old. And kind of represents maybe the peak of Kramer. This is one of the very first pointy headstocks that they had come out with. This is an early 86 model. There's a lot of confusing dating out there as to when this actually came out. I remember this neck coming out in 86. I bought one of these necks in 1986 for my 84 Kramer, which had a very wide neck that I hated. This neck is infinitely better. And later on, I actually wound up getting that was for a Kramer Pacer Imperial. I wound up getting a Kramer Pacer Deluxe. It's pretty much exactly like this guitar. That one I bought with it was sort of a broken down project with a snapped Hondo neck on it. But it had a Kramer body, and it had a Kramer case, and I wound up getting it and then ordering a Kramer neck for it, and it looked pretty much exactly like this guitar when I was done with it. The guitar is in incredible shape for being so old. This is a total it's funny, the one thing you'll hear about over and over and over again with Kramer is, well, this was a transition model. Yeah, they were all transition models. You couldn't get them to keep the same guitar in stock for like more than 18 months. And then all of a sudden they had a whole new lineup with a whole new look. It was very frustrating for a lot of people because every time you turned around they had a new look. So they had the beak headstock, which is what my 83 Kramer Pacer Imperial is. And then they had the offset hockey stick headstock. And that's sort of only for 1 year, like 84. They quickly go to a tilt back headstock in 85 with the rounded top. Those were hit or miss, depending on who made it. This neck is made by ESP, which you can tell by two things. One, there's a rosewood fretboard, and it has a skunk stripe. Usually when there's a rosewood fretboard, they put the truss rod in through the front, because it's not a one-piece neck, it's a two-piece neck. So they put the truss rod in through the front, and there's no skunk stripe. ESP is one of those companies that does the truss rod through the back, even though they're putting a a separate fretboard on it. It also has the headstock. I don't know, maybe in this cam you can see there's a headstock graft right about right there for the tilt back. ESP is the only one that did the luthier joint, the scarf joint, whatever you want to call it, at the headstock. Lucido and Sports did theirs down the back of the neck, just like Ibanez, and pretty much every new modern maker does. The problem is that Lucido and Sports, so I think both in North America, are they in the United States and Canada? They didn't get their processes down, and they separated. The ones from Ibanez, I still have my Ibanez from 1988, built in 87. And that one works just fine because they used a different glue, a different lamination process, and it was way more long-term. It was a little bit of a warranty debacle when the first round headstock ones came out with the scarf joint in the back, and they separated. You know, we couldn't do it. They were able to get it done in Japan, but that technology eluded us. We couldn't figure it out. Eventually, I'm sure we did, but at the time this came out, that's why pretty much Lucido and Sports were dropped. Once you become a warranty, problem, Kramer wanted nothing to do with you. So they, by the time this guitar comes out, 86, I think ESP is 100% making the necks and bodies for them. They're no longer, they used to use 3 makers, ESP, Lucido, and Sports. Sort of a way to make sure that if one company you had a hassle with them, you weren't out of business. You could quickly just go to one of your other makers, right? You spread out your part, suppliers. These would show up. It's hard to know exactly, but I believe these showed up as unfinished. They'd have the frets installed, but, it wouldn't have any hardware installed, and it wouldn't have the name on the headstock, and it wouldn't be, finished. They would finish the body with whatever custom colors they had in stock that they were offering that year, and they would do the logo and everything on the neck. By the time we get here, I don't even know that they're doing the neck work anymore. This might show up with Kramer American right on the headstock, right from ESP, because it was cheaper. And they would just spray the body. But again, it's sort of unknown. It's very all over the place. The reports you hear, from various people that worked at Kramer, exactly what they were doing when. But much like Ibanez, Kramer really didn't make much. They were more of a brand than a manufacturer. And they, the one thing they did was paint. As I understand it, for years they would do their own paint. And their paint was their super diamond coat. And, for a guitar that's 38 years old, I have to say, it's really held up. There is a dent. You can see it in this cam, like right there. But, for the most part, for a guitar that's so almost 40 years old, it is in spectacular shape. This is also around the time when manufacturers are getting coy. The guitar doesn't say Made in USA on it anywhere. On the back it says Neptune, New Jersey, right there. And on the headstock it says Kramer American. So was it made in America? It says American. Yeah, but was it made in America? It says Neptune, New Jersey on the back. These are the games that they used to play, right? Ibanez would make Ben Salem, Pennsylvania on the back. The only thing that was installed in Ben Salem, Pennsylvania was they would attach the necks to the bodies because it was an easier ship to ship them separately, and they would install the pickups that they got out of New York from DiMarzio. And they would put it all together. So the final assembly, but it wasn't really made. They were completely finished guitars by the time they showed up. All they would do is attach, I think, the necks to the bodies. And I'm not even sure they would even do that with Ibanez. But definitely the pickups were being installed, I think, in Ben Salem, Pennsylvania. Because why ship them to Japan only to ship them back to the U.S.? It didn't make sense. So I think some Ibanez stuff, same with Charvel, they had a Texas address on the back of their plate. The guitar was made by Fujigen. But they would list the Texas address, and they're like, these are the rare, you still see it now, these are the rare Texas-made Charvels. No, they're not. No, they're not. They were all made in Japan by Fujigen, and they just put that on there to muddy the waters. They say, was this guitar made in Texas? What do you need to hear? Sure. Kramer was the only one that was so bold as to write the word American on the headstock. But, they were made in USA. They did enough work up to pretty much this period, right? Early 86, mid 86. Again, it's a little rough. Some people said that the switch to these happened in June of 86. Others said, no, it was really like late December 85 and early January 86. And I remember it being more like the summer of 86. But again, we were just one dealer, at the time. So it's hard to really know exactly what was going on, around the industry. Body's made out of alder, I'm pretty sure. My other one's made out of maple, and they would use maple. I'm pretty sure this is alder. And, of course, the neck is maple. Maybe this cam here, yeah. It is a fantastic neck. Great neck. This is the neck I hoped my earlier Kramer had, come with, but it came with that very little window where they were using super wide necks. And I hated that neck. My God, did I hate that neck. Like holding a cricket bat in your hand. Like a boat oar. It's so bad. And I was like, okay. Well, clearly, they changed their neck style. And then, these come out, and I'm like, oh my, if it had this neck, I would have loved it. So that's why I bought one of these necks, in 86. I thought it was going to be the round headstock. It showed up with the point. So, clearly they were, making changes. The general consensus is they went to the point because they were feeling the heat from Charvel and from Jackson. So this happens in like the middle of 86. By 87, they don't even make this logo anymore. They do what's known as the pyramid logo, where the K is really big and fills the space. And the R is a little smaller, and the M and the R. And they fill the space up here, right, between the K and the R. It like pretty much, instead of being an even font, it sort of gets smaller, as it runs out of space to write the letters. I really prefer this logo over the pyramid logo, without a doubt. This is their most classic logo, this one here, the 3D Kramer. That is by far their most classic logo, I think. Also, oversized dots. Another way to check if you have an ESP, dots are bigger, right? They're jumbo, real mother of pearl inlays. The Sports and Lucido necks had just smaller dots. So that's one way to tell whether you have a Sports Lucido or an ESP neck. There's a great website called Vintage Kramer. And they sort of break it all down. You could spend a day going through there and looking at all this. They have whole sections just on bodies and necks and who made what. And it was, like they would say, it was so hard to like track it all down because Kramer was just so all over the place. The great line about the neck is there was no set neck carve. There was no set neck shape or size. And it really varied from neck to neck. And it was a luck of the draw as to what you got. Sort of. I do remember them being somewhat consistent once we got to about once ESP started making them. Then it got way more consistent than when they had 3 different makers for the necks and for the bodies. Not so much the bodies. Those were fairly consistent. The necks. Right? The neck would be different. Like I said, I thought I bought this one neck, and when I went to go pick it up, it took so long for me to buy it. They actually sold that guitar, and they just substituted what they had on the shelf. And I was like, oh, okay. And that neck had a super wide neck, and I hated it from day one. But there's no getting your money back at that point. That deposit was long gone. So I went through with the sale and proceeded to hate the guitar for about 2 years until I got one of these necks on it. Duncan pickups. It's the JB and the vintage staggered single coils. This seems to be disconnected. It does nothing. Doesn't do a thing. I suspect that the guy who owned this kept hitting it. It was making him angry. This guitar needed a lot of work when I got it. First of all, I got it for really short money, well under $1,000, which for, a vintage Old Kramer with the original case is pretty cheap. I have the bar for it. I left it in the case by accident. This needed a lot of work. In fact, when I shot the first part of this video, I thought I was done with the guitar, but as I shot me playing through it, I realized it needed a little bit more work. Whoever owned this was clearly a rhythm player. All of the fret wear was between, say, the 2nd fret and the 10th fret. Up here was fairly pristine. The trem was blocked and jacked down with the strings. It wouldn't move at all. It was like a stop tail piece. Which, I don't know. If I had that much objection to to a Floyd Rose, just get a different guitar. There are plenty of hardtails out there that have very similar, playing necks. I don't think you needed this exact guitar, but whatever. Luckily, it wasn't glued in; it was just friction held, so I was able to take that out. The springs they had a trem setter in at one point, which I won't use. So it had the trem setter spring catches on it. They don't fill me with confidence. The next time I do the strings on this, I will I'll change out the claw. I already picked up a brass claw, and I'll switch it out with the brass claw, just so I have a very even system. I worry that it's not going to stay in decent tune. The real downside is that, like any matte finish, it gets a hot spot over time, and you can clearly see the hot spot on this, where it had, contact over the years, and, that's what happens. I thought about trying to, maybe get it a little bit more matte. They say take a piece of, 800 grit sandpaper and get it on a nice, even block, and just drag the block in one direction to give it, to re-up the matte finish, but I don't know. I guess it adds to its charm a little bit. Others say do it chemically. You put this chemical down, then you neutralize it. I'm like, I could just see this breaking and melting away and being like, oh, why did I even think of that, Yeah, you just leave it alone. I could see that just a complete disaster, waiting to happen. By doing some sort of chemical treatment. So I'm probably just going to leave it like that. I'll figure out, I'm sure they disconnected this because they kept hitting it. I'll probably wire this up. I think it was probably all the way down. Most of them are all the way down. You're in regular. Up, you're in parallel. And in the middle, you're single coil. So we'll see. The candy red finish, which is what this is, was actually a custom color. It was $50 more. Stock colors were transparent, and they had a red and a green, or a red and a blue, and then they had a solid black and white. But if you wanted candy red like this is, or they made a candy blue, I think they made a blue burst. They made a bunch of different custom colors, extra $50. The price of this guitar, when it sold new, was I think $849 or $899. Today that would be about $3,000 roughly. So, if you take what I paid for this guitar and you turn the clock back to $1986, it was the equivalent of if I walked into the store in 1986 buying this guitar for about $190. So, there's still, deals to be had out there. Just probably not on Reverb. Right? I had to get this off of Guitar Center Used. That's the only place you can really go and get a decent deal. Dudes on Reverb tend to try to get every last cent, and I don't blame them. Listen, if you can do it, I like to sell guitars on Reverb. God, I love selling guitars on Reverb. Buying them, not so much. Buying, I tend to go with Guitar Center Used. So we can check this out a little bit. This is a JB. This guitar, I'll get into in a second. I feel like I have to give you a little audio demonstration. I have to bring my gain up. These are actually... These actually are not as... Yeah, that much better. You can hear it. That's one of the beauties of playing through the same patches. You can hear it when it's off. Much better. And then here's the middle. So this had a lot of problems, playing wise. If you were just going to be on just playing a rhythm guitar and you're just playing it down in the lower registers, all set. It had a blocked trem. Everything was fine. Nice low action. The problem was if I went up here and just did that, or if I went like this, hold on. It would fret out. Couldn't bend a note. And some of the notes wouldn't ring out separately like that. It'd be kind of wonky. So I took a look and I'm like, what's going on with this? Well, the frets in the middle needed to be leveled and crowned. In fact, the frets above the 12th fret, especially above the 15th fret, were pretty clean, pretty nice. So I did a leveling. I did a full crowning and polishing on all the frets. And when I was done, my God, it was played great. Except, again, when I was up here. I feel like I'm hitting my cable here. Couldn't do that. Couldn't do a bending like that. It would still fret out. And he's... wouldn't get individual notes. Kind of wonky on a couple of notes. I'm like, man, that's so weird. So I was like, well, let me find my little rocker, my little fret rocker. They're fine. There's no high fret. They're all even. Because I had just leveled and crowned them. Of course they're even. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, what is wrong? A little bit of a mystery. And then, maybe you can see it in this cam here, I noticed this little sliver of copper sticking out the side. I said, oh, he shimmed the neck. Oh, someone's hanging out on the forums a lot. Well, if you shim it, you have to use a piece of copper. It's like, people are sticking like, from matches, like the top of a match book. like little pieces of sandpaper. Sandpaper works great. Little piece of fiberglass mesh. They've been using that stuff for years on this, but it had come to pass that copper, especially copper shielding, was like a really good one. It would stick on one side. It would be nice and solid. It would fill it. So when I saw that copper, I said, oh, he shielded it. Yeah, at first I was like, I said, no. He shimmed it. That's not shielding. He shimmed it. That's a shim, which means this neck is up a little bit. And I checked, the bridge was all the way down. And so I said, when they first made this, they set it so that when the bridge was all the way down, it would be like super low action. But if you shim the neck and you bring the neck up a little bit, then you're way below. You're out of spec. And so, I very carefully, and the action was super low. I very carefully raised the neck, and it totally fixed the bending problem. No problem at all there. Yeah, I easily bend at that. Couldn't do any of that before. Totally fixes that. But then the action started to get a little high on me. So I checked the neck for a bow, and it was bowed. I said, you watch, I'm going to tighten this truss rod down, and the neck is going to straighten out, and this action is going to go back to where we started, which was pretty low friggin' action. In fact, I was having a little trouble bending there because the action's so friggin' low. So I checked the truss rod. It's loose. Completely loose. There's a problem. Start to move it until I start to get a little tension on the truss rod, and then tighten it down just a little bit. Don't go too nuts. Tighten it a little bit, and then see how it works out. And I tightened it down until it had just a tiny bit of relief, but for the most part was, straight. A lot straighter than it was. I mean, you could play around corners before. So, much, much better. And that was it. That was the super recipe, right? Raise the bridge a tiny bit to get that fretting out that happened. I probably could remove the shims and put the bridge back down. It would be fine. But whatever, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? You raise the neck a little bit with the shimming. You have to raise the bridge a little bit, but it should be good. It plays great, and it's like why mess with it if I finally got it working correctly, and it's wonderfully intonated too. So. Again, not a lot of incentive to, to change this out, but it's certainly playing a lot better than it was, and is at least playable when it comes to bending notes. Up in the higher registers, which is something that it just could not do when I first got it. So let's go through a couple of patches here. Here's the 2 pickups. Make sure these are up. The middle pickup. Here it is with you can hear that humbucker kick in. That's where the switch would come in handy, because I could wire it to turn off one of the coils and get that nice coil spread. Most likely the screw coil, because that might be reversed from the center, but I'd have to see. And then here's the humbucker. Yeah, sounds good. Let's go to our favorite behave lead. Just saying, if Hendrix was still alive, he would probably be playing a Kramer Pacer Deluxe. Probably. We can only speculate. Dual heavy rig? Please. Guitar was made for dual heavy rig. Oh, these were the songs I was playing back when I had one of these, you know. Slightly out. There it is. Much better. These are brand new strings. Ernie Ball 10s. Let's go back from where we started. Our good old yeah. Kramer, 1986 Kramer Pacer. American? Sure. Says it right there. Oh, yeah. Pretty quickly, they went to a 3-piece neck. So, a lot of you that have a pointy headstock might say, geez, I don't have a neck like, first of all, I don't have a skunk stripe, but I don't have a neck graft. If anything, I have 3 vertical strips of wood, right? Kind of like how the Ibanez Genesis the guitars have it now, right? Theirs is really a 5-piece. They have a little strip of either rosewood or walnut in between the maple, but you get the idea. It's 3 pieces that run vertically, and that lamination makes it very strong. That comes, I want to say, late 86, and it continues for the rest of the time that Kramer's making guitars. They finally switched to the 3-piece neck, and that makes a huge difference in... so this is a pretty rare neck. This is, again, it's a transition model. They were a moving target. You could not... Kramer, I don't know, man. They were just all over the place. And by December of 1989, they're in bankruptcy. They were like, when this comes out, Kramer is like the guitar. Kramer is like crushing everybody. Nobody, 86, 87, nobody is even coming close. When it changes is in February of 88, when the Ibanez RG series starts to finally ship, right? They've been talking about it through 87, but they never really got them to market. They produced them, they made them. Yours probably has an 80, like mine, has an 87 serial number. But I worked in the music store in 1987. We couldn't get them. It wasn't really till after the 88 NAMM show that they actually started to ship them. Like a lot of companies, they sort of work off of a July 1 to July 1 model. So a lot of their guitars are produced in the late end of the prior year, and they bear that serial number through the following year. So if you have a guitar that's, marked 1990, you probably won't see that guitar until the 1991 catalog, if it's an Ibanez, right? So in 88, when the RG series comes out, the RG 560 and the RG 550, the 550, the 560, the Gem, they are an instant hit, and they put a beat down on Kramer that they did not see coming. They were dealing with Charvel. Jackson was still very expensive. Charvel was their biggest competition with the Fuji Gen stuff. That's why I think they felt the need to use ESP, because they couldn't keep up with the pricing. So there was definitely a pressure to be more competitive. And when Ibanez came out, forget about it. Everybody wanted those guitars. We sold so many of those guitars. Dudes were driving from all over New England to get a custom color that they couldn't find anywhere else. I mean, people were already collecting those Ibanezes, and they were brand new to the market, and they wanted one of every color. We just didn't see that kind of excitement about a brand. We hadn't seen that kind of excitement in a very long time. And let me tell you, in 1988, we sold a lot of those, 88 and 89. By December of 89, Kramer is in bankruptcy. So, there's a lot of reasons why they could have been in bankruptcy. They're partnering with a Russian band was probably the death knell, but it was a slow death. It probably started in 88, continued through 88, really started to feel the pressure in 89. Their last-ditch effort kind of failed, and now all of a sudden they're in bankruptcy. And they were like, oh, don't worry, it's a Chapter 11, we'll emerge. They never emerged. Eventually, the brand got kicked around a little bit. It actually had some venture capitalists from the Michael Jackson, music venture capital firm, and then there was a huge falling out with them. Again, just go out and read the stories on the internet. about how Kramer. This is after Kramer's has gone through bankruptcy. They were sold to some other company. Now that company's trying to sell it again. It was all over the place. Eventually, Gibson Brands buys the name and buys the brand. But for a little while there, it was all over the place. We didn't know who was going to own Kramer. It was really, really. I can't, much like their whole life, a moving target. But there you have it. A 1986 and early 86 Kramer Pacer Deluxe. These are killer guitars. If you can find one, in decent shape for under $1,000, I'd say go for it. If it's between $1,000 and $1,500, it better be freaking pristine. If it's over $1,500, you're dealing with a dreamer. Somebody who thinks that, anything that says the word American is worth $2,000 plus. They're just not. I paid well under $1,000 for this guitar. So, just keep that in mind when you're shopping. Again, it did need work. I did have to level and crown the frets. That's where, if you can do a lot of your own work, you save a lot of money. And guitars that have problems, that aren't physical breakage, can be remedied. Things like leveling and crowning, adjusting action, adjusting truss rods, things like that. Goes a long way. All right, dudes. There you have it. As always, thanks so much for hanging out. And rock on.